This project is a stylized family carving. Stylized carvings place more emphasis on form over detail. Examples of this that you've seen and what inspired this directly would be willow tree figurines. The beginning of the process is determining what's going to be the most forward facing or the most rear facing portions to determine where I can start relieving material and hogging material out. So in the front, the baby in the mother's arm is going to be the most forward facing portion. On the back side, on the other hand, the little boy on the father's shoulders will be farther back than any other portion of the carving. So I know with that where I can start roughing out the largest sections. To do this, I'll use mallet tools, which are the larger gouges and chisels. For this carving, I've chosen cherry wood. Now, I've chosen it because it's a beautiful wood that I love to carve, and of all the choices I had, it just fit the best. What you're seeing is laying out some basic rough lines, areas where I'm going to provide more shaping later. I'm just establishing sections to start working on. And the way that I work on this is I'm looking at it as if it's two separate relief carvings, the front and then the back. And what I want is when each is complete, they meet in the middle to create the full 3D piece. Once I've done the major hogging out of material, I've switched over to palm tools primarily, and I'll be moving around the carving the entire time. I won't place too much emphasis on any particular section until I'm much closer to the final finished piece. Proportion is our main focus right now, and my way of doing this, which I don't know if there is a right or wrong way, but the way that I do it is I find the most forward facing point and the most rear facing point to help establish basic guidelines. Because if I can get those proportions correct, I can work everything else around it. For example, here you can see I'm carving around the shoulder of the mother, and I have the father's arm coming around the shoulder. I changed my mind on this later, and I take a gamble in doing that, but it was well worth the effort for the final product. The key, if this is a type of project you're working on, is to stop often, take a look at what you're doing, check your work. And again, don't become too fixated on any particular area when you're still trying to get everything into the right proportion. The only example of this I could think of is if you were doing a drawing and you got one little piece of it just right. You drew an eye beautifully, and then now you have to match the rest of the drawing to that. Well, it's easier if everything comes together as a whole when it comes to the carving, instead of trying to match everything else perfectly, because if that perfect eye ended up being a ½ inch too high or too low by comparison, there's no erasing it in a carving. You have to carve that out and reshape to get it back to where it's going to flow right, and it's going to look right. I can say with all honesty that I didn't have any points during this carving where I was uncertain of how it was coming out. I felt pretty good throughout the whole process. It just seemed to all fall into place the way it needed to. Which meant I could focus more on just having fun with it. And I did. As you're watching this, the speed that you're seeing this all take place is twice the original speed, and quite a bit is cut out. But I don't think anyone really wanted to watch 5 hours of carving. If you were paying attention, you would see that when this first started, the workspace, the surface behind that area that I'm carving at now was clean, nothing there. Well, as you go through a project like this, you reach for the tool that you think is going to best do the job. And when you have more than one to choose from, you experiment, you try different things to find what works best for you. And then if you're anything like me, you forget to put it back to where it goes because you think you're going to need it again in a minute. That's how you end up with a pile of tools on your bench. Right now I'm trying to get the form of the little boy on the shoulders to match up with that forward facing, leaning half over appearance. That's the only way I know how to explain it. Then I'll jump from there back to the front, because again, if I can get those two key areas to come in and flow the way they need to, everything else falls into place. I'm not showing them in the video, but I also used family photos at this point to give a better reference for the shape of the heads. And it's not a big difference, but there's no hair on the father, so we have a nice clean, smooth dome. And then for the little boy on the shoulders, we got a curly top going on. And the mother's hair, we want that to smoothly flow. And of course, we don't want the face to be out of proportion and look wonky. The knife I'm using here I made from my grandfather's straight razor. It was the first knife I ever made, and one of my favorite carving knives to date. I'll point out how I'm not using my hand by itself to just push in to make these cuts. I'll use the thumb of my left hand to help guide the cut through. That gives me more control over each cut, and in my experience, it leads to a cleaner cut, a better cut overall. Creating some distance between the chest of the boy and the father's head. And now we get into that curly top. This is when little details do finally come into play and really help to make the piece what it is at the end. Something special for someone. Something unique just to them. And hopefully something that they'll keep and cherish. It's also a good idea to remember to keep your tools well honed and well sharpened if you're attempting a project like this. Remember that if you're having to push so hard that you're seeing the white of your knuckles, or you're even starting to shake a little, you're probably pushing too hard, trying to take too deep of a cut, or your tool's just simply not sharp enough. And when that's the case, take some time to go, take it, run it across a strop if it needs it, take it to a stone, resharpen it, and get it back to a point to where you're getting those nice clean, this is a term I've used quite a bit, burnishing cuts, because those nice clean burnishing cuts are something you don't want to sand And if you can create an entire piece and cover it essentially with nothing but those burnishing cuts, you're not going to have to sand it at the end. That cuts down on the work, and to be able to carve an entire piece and not have to use any sandpaper at all, especially when it's something like this, I think that's a pretty cool accomplishment. But it's whatever you want. This is my piece. I'm carving it for someone else. You might be carving a piece for yourself, and if it's your project, it's your rules. So whichever way you go with it, just have fun. That's because carving in and of itself is something you should be able to take pride in, have pleasure while doing. If you're not having fun while you're doing it, if it's not bringing you any joy at all, it probably isn't the hobby for you. Most certainly wouldn't be the business for you, because you've just turned something that's supposed to be beautiful into work. And I don't know about you, but for me, work's no fun. I'd rather carve, have fun. If I get paid in the process, that's just a good day. What I'm using now is a V tool that goes in and just puts some fine lines down. Of course, no sooner than I tell you which tool I'm using, I switch it up, but it's a little fishtail gouge. Great for rounding. As you're watching this, as I'm watching back over it again, I'm thinking about how nothing makes it out of this shop. Nothing's going to go to anyone unless it passes my own personal standards. If once a commission is complete, there's this inkling of or a want to keep it for myself, then I know I've accomplished what I set out to do. I've created something that the person who receives it is far more likely to appreciate what it is. If there are any questions about how I did any particular aspect of this carving, feel free to put those down in the comments. There's also the Instagram. You can go there and message me. I'll try to remember to put those into the comments, not comments, but the description. As we put in the final details, giving the carving those last little subtleties and niceties, I want to thank anyone who hung in there the whole time, didn't skip ahead or anything like that. I really appreciate your time. I may be jumping the gun here, but I will add that if I manage to, please feel free to subscribe. Hit that thumbs up if I've earned that. Ultimately, I once again just want to thank you for your time. And as always, take good care.